opening. Okay, let's go on to the next one. How about someone in your extended family? So let's say a cousin, a great aunt, I don't know, the husband of a friend of a family member or something. I don't know. 3, 4, 3, 4. Okay. So we might try to approach it a little bit. We might still stay a little bit further apart because we haven't really had that cross that barrier, right? We're not really at that barrier. Or we're keeping that barrier, excuse me. I'm sorry, you all. I'm like massively coughing over here. Okay, a couple more. How about a coworker? How would you greet a coworker? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, thanks, Kelly. Yeah, in the Greek culture. We're going to talk a lot about culture, not a lot, but we are going to talk about culture in a little while because culture really does have a lot to do with how we greet. And Elijah, I don't want to put you on the spot, but Elijah used number 1 and someone else is using number 1 right now. And that could also be a cultural thing too. Cool. Okay. How about someone you just met? Five, shaking hands, maybe just wave. Good. Good. The girl in 5. Okay. Just kind of standing there smiling, making the eye contact. I like that, Brittany. Yeah, 5. Nice firm handshake. All right, and last but not least, let's think about your job, whatever place of employment that you have, a person who is visiting that place of employment. Would any of these work? You're all a little quieter on that one, but you're still thinking like 5 and more of a professional thing, right? 5 or 2, acting is a bit less formal. Depending upon your coworkers, right? Sometimes we see our coworkers more than we see our own families, depending upon, what type of job we have. So sometimes you feel very comfortable in giving someone a high 5, which is cool. Okay, so I want you to think about that as we go through. I want you to think about right now, we just demonstrated how we could use 6 different kind of types of a greeting to different communities within our life, right? So why does communication actually work? So there are 4 styles of communication, and this is a video. I'm going to hope there's no ads.
It's important to understand the 4 major types of communication so that you can effectively communicate with people who have different communication styles than you. The way we communicate with others is shaped by our personality, and every person has a predominant communication style based on the level of dominance, I win, and sociability, you win. Aggressive, passive, assertive, and passive-aggressive communication styles all have their own distinct characteristics. Here, we will help you identify each and provide tips for you to communicate most effectively with the different types. Assertive, I win, you win. Assertive communicators are direct and honest about their thoughts and feelings. They ask questions and share opinions with clarity and confidence. An assertive communicator will make their needs and desires known and will work to build respectful and collaborative relationships with others. Assertive is the most effective style of communication as it comes from a place of confidence. If used in the right way, it can help you get the outcome you want. Assertiveness is also the most beneficial and productive type of communication in the workplace, encompassing the ability to share views and ideas. Assertive communicators take on challenges, but also know how to say no. They understand their own limits and protect their boundaries without acting aggressively or defensively. They are also able to make others feel comfortable, and are the ones that people look for because they know they can easily have an effective discussion. The key characteristics of assertive communication are honesty, directness, responsibility, respectfulness. Assertive behaviour is expressed by stating needs, feelings and opinions openly, clearly, respectfully and appropriately. Body language matching the message. A collaborative approach. Using I statements. friendly eye contact, standing up for themselves politely and confidently, listening actively without interruption. When you're communicating with someone who's assertive, be direct and honest about your thoughts and feelings. Ask them questions and actively listen to their responses. As the best communication style for almost all situations, you can learn to be more assertive by sharing your needs and ideas confidently, being a good listener, being aware of your body language and tone to ensure they match the message, encouraging others to share their ideas, using emotional intelligence, being open to feedback, speaking with facts, don't judge or exaggerate, delivering messages in a calm and controlled manner, ensuring your message is clear and easily understood, practicing. This will improve your confidence, which is key. Passive. I lose, you win. Passive communication is characterized by vagueness or inaction. When a person communicates passively, they are not likely to respond directly. A passive communicator may have difficulty expressing their thoughts and feelings and may be unwilling to challenge others. Passive communicators please others to avoid conflict. They ignore their own wants and needs and put someone else's above their own. It's not usually a style seen in senior management positions. The key characteristics of passive communication are indirectness, silence, avoidance, resignation. Signs of a passive communicator include quiet and not looking for attention, allowing others to step on their rights, acting like they don't care, don't have a strong opinion, not able to say no, lack of eye contact, poor posture and fidgeting, a soft voice, and apologetic demeanour. If you're communicating with someone who is passive, be aware of your tone and don't push them to engage in conversation. Have conversations in private. This is often more comfortable for a passive communicator than in group settings. Ask for their opinions and use open-ended questions. Allow plenty of time for them to think over their responses and stay patient with long silences. Passive-aggressive. I lose, you lose. Passive-aggressive communication can be difficult to identify. It can occur when someone is resentful, annoyed or angry, but they keep these feelings to themselves instead of dealing directly with the source of their frustration. Passive-aggressive communication is often demonstrated through sarcasm, duplicity or stubbornness. A passive-aggressive communicator might be reluctant to voice their opinions, but not agree with yours either. Passive-aggressive communicators will appear to be passive and compliant, but are actually manipulative or belligerent when taking action. Two-faced is a common term used to describe these communicators. Communication may seem to be smooth and easy, but the outcome can differ from what was agreed upon or expected. These people can be unreliable and untrustworthy. The key characteristics of passive-aggressive communicators are resentment, avoidance, lack of directness, and resistance. Signs of a passive-aggressive communicator include quietly manipulating a situation into one that benefits them, muttering rather than confronting the issue or person, using sarcasm, denial or defensiveness, body language that does not match their message, giving the silent treatment. If you're communicating with someone who is passive-aggressive, be mindful of your own feelings and don't let the other person's negativity get to you. Make clear requests. Don't leave room for misunderstanding or confusion. Document conversations and outcomes. Confront negative behaviour. Consider looping in a manager if your conversation doesn't make any difference. Directly ask them for feedback or a solution to try and get honest communication. Aggressive. I win, you lose. Aggressive communication is usually loud and hostile, but it can also take the form of silence and intimidating body language. An aggressive communicator may use words like you should or you have to when talking to others, which can be especially harmful to someone who is sensitive or a people pleaser. This communicator is focused on achieving their goals at all costs, even if the other person is disadvantaged, and is not interested in finding mutual agreement or collaboration. The person can become forceful or even bullying. Aggression should never be used as a communication style, but it is important to identify it so you're able to understand where the other person is operating from and take the right approach in your communication. Aggressive communicators often express their thoughts and feelings without a filter and usually dominate conversations at the expense of others. They may also react before thinking, thereby negatively affecting relationships and decreasing productivity in the workplace. While an aggressive communication style might get respect in certain management situations, it's intimidating and counterproductive in the end. The key characteristics of aggressive communication are hostility, dominance, impatience, criticism, urgency. Signs of an aggressive communicator include speaking loudly and making demands, trying to dominate and inspire fear, interrupting and impulsive, criticizing, blaming or attacking others, overbearing posture, using aggressive gestures and intense eye contact, not listening well, using humiliation and you statements. When you're communicating with someone who is aggressive, don't give in to their demands or engage with their hostility. Don't take their criticism personally. Focus the conversation on facts. Be professional and courteous no matter the provocation. Remain calm and even-tempered. Direct the conversation away from personal issues or emotions. Walk away from the situation if the aggressive communicator becomes too demanding, intimidating, or you're no longer making positive progress. Here's some tips for effectively communicating with people who have a different communication style than you. Practice active listening. When someone is speaking, it's important to listen and absorb what they're saying, not what you plan on saying next. Be aware of their body language and tone. Ask questions. Asking questions can help you better understand the other person's point of view. This can also help build connections with that person, showing that you're interested in what they have to say. Be open-minded and respectful. When you're communicating with someone who has a different communication style, it's important to be open-minded and try to understand why they're communicating the way they are. Be patient. Take the time to listen to what the other person is saying and be patient with them. Use non-verbal communication. Non-verbal communication such as facial expressions and body language can convey a lot of information and can be used to communicate effectively with different communication styles. Use different methods of communication. Try to use different ways of communicating with the other person, such as email, text, or face-to-face. This will help ensure that the other person is receiving the message correctly. Summarize and confirm. After the other person has finished speaking, it's important to summarize what you've heard in order to make sure that you both understand each other. Our communication styles are influenced by many factors, including our upbringing, our culture, and even our mood. It is possible to become more aware of your dominant communication style and actively develop it into an assertive style, which is the optimum form of business communication. Be aware of the communication styles of others and the techniques available to communicate effectively with them to build beneficial workplace relationships.
Okay, that was a lot. Woo! All right. So, I'm gonna kind of just open it up to you all. What are some takeaways that you just got from that video? Is there anything that stood out to anybody? And you can unmute or you can put it in the chat. Either way is fine. Adapting to others' communication styles. Yes. Charlie, do you want to, I hate to put you on the spot, but thank you for talking. Do you want to kind of elaborate a little bit more on that? Like you having to adapt or I don't
What
want to
I
go
had
ahead.
in mind was you adapting to other people and just being open-minded to um people who just need help in how they communicate. So just like helping them be able to communicate well with you.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you so much. Kelly says, body language needs to match the verbal message we're sending. Oh my gosh. Yes, Kelly. I everyone will know this. I tend to show on my face what I'm thinking in my head. And people always tell me, stop thinking out loud with your face, Chrissy, right? And I know that. I know I'll do that. Like my eyes might get really big or something might happen, right? But you have to be able to match that in your communication. So if my eyes get really big and someone says, what's wrong? And I say nothing, that's not going to match, right? In any way, shape, or form. Like I need to be able to do that. Thank you for sharing. Communication is a big thing individuals misunderstand depending upon the approach of others. Tania, yes. So you want to expand a little bit on that? I'll put you all on the spot. Now you're like, I'm not gonna type.
Yes, don't mind. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. So just elaborating on what I typed, I would just say kind of like piggybacking off of Kelly with the body language, and as you were saying as well, I think that a lot of people, the way our approaches can come off a wrong way, and we have to, I don't know who said it. Oh, Charlie, adapt to other communication styles. That way, it isn't a big misunderstanding when we are communicating with different people from different walks of life. So we have to be considerate of that. I'm so sorry I'm out of breath. I'm like walking the track.
You're
But yes,
totally
that's it.
fine. Do not worry. Awesome. Great. Elijah, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I like that a lot. Do you want to elaborate, or I think that kind of says it all, but would you like to say any more?
So, um, there's a time to confront and a time to um to be more subtle in your approach. So I think that there are some people who only understand force and aggression, but the best way to overcome that in another person would be through gentleness and subtlety. So where you would, as a knee-jerk reaction, you might want to build off of their aggression, and then that might come on a runaway cascade where it just gets more and more aggressive. One person shouts, the other person shouts louder, and so on and so forth. But the best way to quench anger is with a gentle word. You don't add fire to a fire to douse a fire. You add water to a fire. So that's what I am there.
Yeah. I think that's a really good method when you're teaching little kids too, right? But no, I completely agree. Adam, certain communication styles may be used in certain situations, while others may be viewed as overbearing or underwhelming. Yeah. Do you have an example of that, Adam, that you could share? Again, I'm putting you all on the spot. I'm sorry. If you don't, you can just say no,
An
Chrissy.
example. Just for example, like if you're in, let's say, um, like a business setting, like I think the video mentioned something about that, where like if you're talking about business, you might want to be more firm in the approach because, you know, it's business, you're dealing with, you know, money and, you know, very important things. Whereas if you're having a conversation that's supposed to be like lighthearted, it's just, you're just having a good time, you don't want to be like overbearing or like, and then everybody's just going to be thinking to themselves why are they acting this way? Whereas like if you're in a business setting and like you're underwhelming, like you're not speaking your mind, you don't know what you really want in the situation, then they might be thinking like maybe this person isn't right for the job, or yeah, just to give an example.
No, thank you. That I think that was a great example. And you know, it can also I love that you're talking about like professionalism versus personal, right? I I think everyone kind of has a different way that they should talk professionally, probably than they talk personally, right? And I think too, depending upon how you talk professionally, can also impact the clientele, right? So for instance, if I'm at Subway and I want to order my sub a certain way and the person behind the counter doesn't like what I'm saying, or I ask for something else and they kind of give me a hard time, I'm going to be less likely to return back if I'm having a confrontation, right? And so I think too, you have to think about the effects on the company too when you think about communication. If communication is not effective, I had to call a company dealing with something for my mom, and every single time I would call them, they would say, "We'll send an email. We'll send an email." Yes, email is a great way of communication, but why was that the answer all the time? You know, so I think too, it's using the appropriate style of communication when you're dealing with something. So thank you all so much for all of that. So some of the things that they talked about in there was active listening. How many of you actually are good at active listening? Yeah. So, how many of you know what active listening is? I think is another thing too, right? So, active listening is being able to not let the distractions around you take away from that interaction, right? We have these things at our fingertips that are called cell phones, computers, all of these things, right? That stimulate our attention and pull our attention in multiple ways. Um, I like to quote this sign that I have in my office. It's actually at Dundalk, and it says multitasking, screwing everything up simultaneously, right? Because we all think that we can do these things and that we're listening, but are we actually being active in our listening? And so active means put your phone down, face the person who's talking to you, make eye contact with them. For some people, that is a very uncomfortable thing to have to do. And honestly, I think this is my opinion. I don't know. You guys can challenge me on it, which I love, by the way. But I think ever since COVID and us having to go virtual, it's been harder to get back into the swing of having personal conversations with people because it's easier just to send a text message or it's easier just to send an email about something versus sitting down and having a face-to-face conversation with somebody, right? So yes, we can listen but not hear. Thank you, Kelly. That's the exact same thing. So I might be listening to you and I might be looking at you, but if I'm not responding in any way, or kind of just saying, nodding my head in some kind of way, asking. So I love what they say here. Ask questions. It shows that you want to be involved in the conversation if you ask more about what they're talking about. But there's something very different than asking a question and being a one-upper. Does everyone know what I mean about that? So there are people out there that you might have a conversation with somebody and they'll be like, oh my gosh, I did that too. And I experienced it. And here's all about me. Blah, 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 blah. Right? When that wasn't the point of the conversation. The point of the conversation was they were telling you something and you were being an active listener for them. It's okay to say, oh, I had a similar situation and leave it at that, right? But you don't need to make it about yourself. And I think, that's a really interesting one when you're asking questions. Being patient with people, oh my gosh. Some people just take a moment. My husband knows that I talk about him all the time on all things that I do. So he never really wants to meet anyone that I work with because he's like, you use me as an example all of the time. But my husband could tell you a story that I could tell you in 5 minutes. He'll take 15 to tell because he has so many details that he wants to go into to make sure that I know exactly what happened. Like he'll tell me when I walked in the door, I put my key in the keyhole and I turned it to the left and then I went in where I'm like, I walked in the door. We have different perceptions on what we want to say and how we get there. And I'm realizing I'm talking and you all are talking in the chat. So let me pay attention to there and I'm going to stop for a minute. Oh my gosh, if you want to speak, yes, please unmute yourself. I don't want to say your name wrong. Is it Hadiba? Hadiya?
Yeah. Yeah.
Please go ahead and speak.
Yeah, thank you so much. No, what I wanted to add was like I feel like I was mostly like cut off from most of the food because of COVID. We didn't really talk that much. Like it was like mostly just like the class. We see each other on camera, a small wave here and there. It wasn't really much talking. But like after I got back in this swing, it was like really nice to talk to people, listening to them, because like I didn't get a chance to do that for like around 3 years, and it was a nice change of pace. So I feel like I feel more I feel happier to listen and I feel happy to talk with people now because like I didn't get a chance to for a long time. So now I'm more enthusiastic when I'm speaking, or I feel really enthusiastic. I like asking questions when I don't understand stuff. I'm just like, wait, how did that happen?
Sometimes we didn't realize what we missed until we didn't have it. Right? Yeah, I miss that too. I'm a people person. I get energy off of people. And so just being on a screen, all of the time was really hard for me too. And now being able to be around people and then also having some screen time, I think is a nice balance. So thank you for sharing that. I really do appreciate that. Ashley, I really like this a lot. You said, I find asking a question of, would you like me to respond or just listen? That's really interesting. I mean, is that just based upon your situation? Is that just something that you just automatically do? How do you work that?
It was something that I've noticed. As you know, we work with students, and then being a mom, sometimes people just want to talk. They don't really want any, audible, not you should do this, or I feel you, I was there too. They just want you just to listen. They just need you to be a sounding board and that's it. So instead of me kind of forcing my opinion on them, as you know, a mother would do. But instead of me forcing my opinion, hey, do you want me to respond to this, or I'm just listening? Just okay, I got you. All right, I know where my position is, and I know how my body language, facial expression, all that needs to be throughout the conversation. It's no offense.
Mm-hmm. No, thank you. I think I have found myself doing that too. Where, you know, they want to come and then you talk and then you see their whole body language changes, right? And then you're kind of going, okay, hold on. Like, do you just want me to listen? And I can do that, you know, like I can be that person for you. But if you want my opinion, that's a different ball game, right? Like, I'm not trying to make it that you get more upset by what we're talking about. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Can I just add one thing, Chrissy?
Please, yes, please, Kelly.
Yeah, actually, I really like what you said there, because earlier in the little video, when it was telling us about the 4 types of communication, it started off with the assertive type of communication, and it said an assertive communicator makes their needs and thoughts known. They make them clear in that interaction, so the other person knows what to expect, or how they might should react, or what the choices are in terms of reacting. So I like what you said there, because you're making your needs known, or you're saying to them, I'd like to know what it is that you need so I can respond accordingly. So I think that was very good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And Brittany, I said, I also feel like we should normalize asking if people okay with just listening, because that is not how everyone functions. That is so true, Brittany. And I think too, we find those people in our lives, right? We find those people that are our confidence, that we know that we can go to, and that we can have those conversations where we just want someone to listen. But thank you for saying that. I think that's really good, because it is not normalized in any way that people just sit there and just listen, right? Unless they're being paid to be your counselor, right? It's probably like the only time someone will actually just do it because they have to. And you can challenge me, I might be wrong, you know, you never know. So the other thing that I want to kind of touch on a little bit is body language. So body language is so huge. And, you know, I was giving an example of me, that my face tells a lot of things about how I'm feeling, right? I have a lot of facial expressions. I grew up as a theater kid. I tend to be a little over the top at times. And I know that. I'm okay with that. And people who know me love me for it. It's fine. However, there are certain things about your body that you have to think about. And so I have a fun, it's a very short video, but I want to show you all, and then I want your feedback on it. So hold on, no, okay. All right, here we go.
One of the benefits of working at ABH is the ability to create your own schedule. There's so much flexibility. You're able to tailor.
Skip. Okay. thoughts on that? So there's some things that they touched on. They touched on your smile, they touched on your eyebrows, they touched on mirroring, they touched on your arms and eye contact and all those things. Are there any initial thoughts from anyone? Go ahead, Benjamin.
Well, I think it's something that people, it's a natural instinctive reaction that we have based on our intense emotion at that time. Whether it be as I've seen the lying one where you stare at it for long periods of time. At that time, your mind is probably like, what if he finds out? I must keep my eyes straight in order to not appear like I'm lying. And if that is too intense, then he doesn't think clearly and he starts to stare at it like a maniac, and it feels uncomfortable. So yeah, I think it really focuses on intense emotions based on the situation.
Absolutely. And Charlie put in here, everything needs to be put into context when looking at these signs. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think too, it's also cultural too, you know, sometimes when you look at certain things. So definitely we take this with a grain of salt and a holistic approach, but I find personally the mirroring one to be weird. And I don't know if that's just me. But like if I'm sitting across from somebody and I have my hand on my desk or I'm holding a cup, and then all of a sudden their hands on the desk holding a cup, but everything they do, they're like mimicking. I feel like that is weird. I mean, I get what they're saying. Like if you're both sitting back and both relaxed and, you know, and you're very open to conversation, that's one thing. But I'm like, I don't think you need to pick up a cup and follow their every move, right? I feel the video is talking more about how to understand, yes, other people's body language, and then how to act to it rather than how to act. Yes, absolutely. So they always say a lot of times if hands are crossed, it means that you're closed off, that you don't want to be approached. You don't want to talk about it anymore. You've shut down. Sometimes it just means you're cold. Right? So when we're talking about context, those are things that we need to make sure that we're talking about. Or nervousness. Thank you. Yeah, sign of nervousness too. Many things could be a sign of nervousness at the same time, you know, the cross leg thing, you know, all of that kind of stuff. But I think body language is really important to say. If you see that someone's kind of turning away from you as you're talking, that should tell you something, right? Like they're probably not as invested in this as you want them to be, you know. So it's okay to say, do you need to go somewhere else? You okay? Right? All right, I realize this is going longer than I wanted. I know that's shocking to anyone who knows me. All right, so I'm going to run through these really quickly. So barriers to communications. So some of these we've already talked about briefly, but I just want to touch on them very quickly. But there are barriers that are going to affect how we communicate with people. So let's think about physical barriers, like if there's noise or disruptions or things that are out there, right? So how do we make sure that we can have good conversations if there are physical boundaries? And so things like reduce the noise, right? Go and find a space where you can go. Maybe shut a door, have a conversation. Maybe be able to use technology to your advantage, right? If you're not close to someone, and just make sure that you're in a space that's conducive for you, right? Psychologically, there might be a barrier too. And this could be you or the person that you're talking to. You know, there could be stress or anxiety or preconceived notions that are there. So some things to do there, you know, of course, if you are dealing with stress or you're dealing, you know someone who is, share resources with them. Let them know that there are places where they can go to get help, especially here at CCBC. And I know Kelly is here as an advisor, but Kelly also works in our college and community outreach area, who are here for students, you know, that might be struggling with stress or anxiety or other social things that are going on, mental health issues. There could also be perceptual barriers, meaning stereotypes or biases, right? we have to all admit, we all have our own biases and stereotypes that we have grown up with in our lives. Whether or not we change our mindset is different versus whether or not we keep that same mindset, right? So when you think about perception, you need to think about breaking those biases, and you need to think about how can you do that as an individual. So having workshops on those things, attending things like this so that you can become better with understanding why these things might happen. And also be able to take criticism, like it's okay. If you say something that was really out of context and someone comes to you and says, I need to tell you how that made me feel when you said that, accept that criticism. It's okay to do that. Emotional barriers might be there. You might be angry or fearful to say how you're feeling at that moment, right? You might not want to. You might be afraid of repercussions, or maybe you don't trust the person that's talking to you or talking with you, or you need to talk to. So if it's you, make sure that you're creating a safe space for people to be able to come to you and open up to you. And make sure that you are not combative in how you're speaking to people, right? I know I'm kind of going through these fast, but I will make sure that you all get links. Dan always sends these out, so you all have links. Technology could be another barrier for all of this. Like if there's a lack of access to technology, or maybe you're just not as familiar with some digital tools that are out there, make sure everyone has the same access. And that sometimes is really hard. If your group is meeting on Teams and not everyone feels comfortable meeting on Teams, then that could be a barrier to your communication with your club and organization. Language is a huge barrier to communication, right? We might use certain jargon, or maybe English is not the first language of everyone who is around us. And so we have to take things into consideration that we should probably use very clear, precise language when we're talking, and avoid jargon if it's not around people that we already understand. I love CCBC. I've been here for 16 years. I'm dedicated, but CCBC loves acronyms, right? And so a lot of times students will walk around going, I have no idea what you're talking about, because we love to be like, well, go on my CCBC and go to Simon and then go here and then go here. And they're like, who's Simon? Like I played Simon Says when I was a kid, right? So, I mean, that's just an example, but use jargon that everybody understands, right? Like this is the place you go to see your bill. Oh, I understand then. I get it. And then there's also organizational barriers. Maybe it's just within your organization itself. Maybe the hierarchy structure, sorry, there's a typo there. A hierarchy structure just doesn't communicate down. Maybe there's just no communication, and maybe there's not supposed to be, but hopefully if you're in an organization where you have, a high hierarchy, hopefully they are communicating all the way down the chain of command, but we'll see. And the one that for some reason is not on there is cultural barriers too, right? There could definitely be cultural barriers that come into play. Different languages, different customs, different norms, all those things too, that we have to learn and adapt to. And others have to learn and adapt to the styles that we have here. All right. I had an activity, but I think we've done enough. I don't think we need to do this unless people want to stick around. But the reason I was going to do a spot the difference, which just showed you the spot the difference. But if you think about playing the game spot the difference, where you see two different pictures and you have to figure out what is different between them. So for instance, I did a Halloween theme. You see what I did here. But when you look at these two, the three things that are circled are the difference. But the only way that you're going to be able to figure that out is being mindful to the details, right? And so the reason I wanted to wrap up with this today is I think that's really important in communication, to be mindful to the details of the communication. Be mindful of who you are speaking to. Be mindful of who is speaking to you. Be mindful of your surroundings and the situation and all the very details that goes into having a conversation with somebody, What is your face saying? What is your body saying? What are your words saying? Okay. So I was going to do this, but like I said, we're kind of running out of time and I want to be respectful of time. But you can all go online and Google this. It's called Spot the Difference Halloween. It's pretty fun. I couldn't find them all, just going to say. I might not be the best at this. All right. Oh, it's going to play. I did not want it to play. All right. So I'm going to stop sharing. Do we have any questions or any final comments from anybody? Oh, thank you all. I do what I do because I love it. So, all right. Well, we have another one in 2 weeks. And that one actually is going to be happening during Veterans Day week. So we're going to talk about like resiliency and leadership. So looking forward to that one. Then we have a few more, to get us through the semester. But if there's ever a topic that you all would love for us to present on and you would, love us to do, please drop me a note or Dan Coco also coordinates this. So we'll be able to